I recently had a very interesting conversation with a fellow analyst who specializes on Mount Kenya politics. And at the end of our long conversation analyzing Kenyan politics, I broke out into a cold sweat. Stay with me and you'll find out why. You'll totally understand why that happened. What is bothering me so much? To simplify it all and make it very easy to digest, we're going to break down our discussion into some questions which I will pose and then answer based on our very interesting and revealing conversation. In democracies the world over, where the executive does not buy the entire house to get a bill passed, how are laws made? They are made through deals which politicians make, and these deals are not made public. That is very, very important and super relevant to a situation in Kenya and Kenyan politics right now. Former US President Bill Clinton, in his book, actually a biography titled My Life, he describes the process of making laws as being very similar to making sausages. Now, if you ever saw sausages being made manually, you would never, ever eat them again. What did President Clinton mean? Well, simply put, he meant that the dirty dealings that go on behind the scenes, very filthy, unhygienic things that happen behind the scenes, before two parties can agree enough for a law to be passed, it is crazy. Of course, we the public will always get an official explanation, using phrases like, we have found middle ground, we agree on certain points, we have compromised, etc., etc. But the real details of the deal which was made are never, ever made public. I just felt that we should start with that question so that none of us loses perspective. Okay? This is how politics is played all over the world. Okay? Not just Kenya. Second question. What was the real deal that led to the handshake? The chini ya maji handshake between President Ruto and Raila Odinga's ODM. Now, the answer to that question will make some of us on this channel sick to the pits of their stomach. Some of us will be shocked and some of us will be angry. But before we come to that answer, let us back up a little, so that we understand, and also so that we have evidence that a similar deal has been made before. What were the hidden details behind the very famous handshake between President Uhuru Kenyatta and Raila Odinga? Stay with me and I will give you all the very shocking details behind this story, what was happening in the background that will shock you to your bones. But first, allow me a brief word on behalf of our sponsors for today's show. Lemify is an app very useful for sending money to your loved ones, and it has very many advantages. The best exchange rates in the market, no exorbitant fees, etc., etc. And you have a chance to try it out, and if you use my code, you will get a cashback reward, and therefore I would urge you to give it a try, and then of course let me know how it goes. Just use the code Kumekucha, okay? Definitely something worth trying out. Right! What were the hidden details behind the very famous handshake between President Uhuru Kenyatta and Raila Odinga? To this day, a vast majority of Kenyans are sure that the whole idea was to stop the NASA protests, the opposition protests, and the resist campaign by people like Miguna. At the time, many people believe that that is exactly what happened. And it is impossible or very difficult to convince them otherwise. But for those of us who want the truth, here's the shocking truth. Indeed, what the handshake in the first place was, wait for this one, the then Deputy President William Samoei Ruto. Why? Let us start with the information that Ruto himself has given us about a private conversation held in State House shortly after David Maraga's Supreme Court had nullified the election of President Uhuru Kenyatta and his deputy William Ruto in 2017. Ruto told us that he went to see Uhuru at State House Nairobi, and the long and short of that conversation was that Uhuru wanted to give up the presidency and allow the real winner and NASA to have their way. And the then Deputy President Ruto told us that he was so disgusted that he wanted to slap the president. And in fact he would have done it, but the only thing that held him back was the presidential security. I am very sure most of us remember that. And with the benefit of hindsight, I believe we can all understand why that was not an option for Ruto. He was not going to allow that to happen. Because, simply put, it would have frustrated his plan to become president of Kenya. Okay? Think about it. With Raila Odinga as president and with a NASA government, how would have 2022 worked out for William Samoei Ruto? Indeed, after the 2017 election results in constituencies countrywide, and especially after the massacre in the Mount Kenya region, most of you know what I mean, Ruto MPs through and through, Ruto MPs were rigged in 2017. It was very clear that after those elections, what Ruto's intentions were. And indeed, as President Kenyatta's second term unfolded, you need to know, there were several attempts by Ruto to become president before 2022. But that is a story for another day. Let me stay on point. And so the main driving force and the main trigger behind the handshake was to protect President Uhuru Muigai Kenyatta from Ruto's very scary majority and complete control of parliament, which, for example, would have made an impeachment motion against President Uhuru Kenyatta a walk in the park. And so, in simple language, the deal under the table was, Raila, you will deal with Ruto. You will stop Ruto for me. And what was Raila to get in return? A through pass during the 2022 presidential elections. Because Raila handlers felt that without any government opposition, which would lead to rigging by government machinery, Raila would definitely see State House, finally. Okay? And now we're ready to answer that question. What was the real deal, chini ya maji, between Ruto and Raila that saw a very abrupt end to the Gen Z protests and cooperation, while pretending not to cooperate, between ODM and UDA, Ruto's UDA? What was the deal which was made? Hey. Now carefully note the following. In 2017, Raila made the deal with Uhuru. The two of them were seated in a room, alone, with nobody. Even Junet Mohammed had to wait at the reception. Raila, who has always been known for wide consultations, somebody who does wide consultations before making a major decision, never consulted any of the other NASA partners. Neither did he involve them. In 2022, exactly the same thing happened. And Kalonzo Musyoka, Martha Karua, and very, very important, Uhuru Kenyatta waliwachwa kwa mataa. They were left stranded and confused, not understanding what has just happened. And the deal was that Raila Odinga stabilizes the Ruto presidency using his political influence, very major political influence, right across the country. Okay? Has it worked? Well, 50-50. Okay? The Ruto ship has been steadied somewhat. Okay? But it is still in very, very rough seas. Okay? The mistake that Raila made with all his experience was to forget this was 2024, not 2017. Vitu kwa ground zimechange. The ground has shifted very, very dramatically. And what was Raila to get in return? Not the AU position. Forget that one. That was a decoy. It was the decoy of the century. The political decoy of the century. Okay? In one of my previous special reports, I explain in detail, because this is highly sensitive, exactly what I mean and exactly what happened and what is going to happen. Now, there was another promise given to Raila that I will come back to towards the tail end of my video. It is sijui niseme nini. Okay, wait for it. This piece of information will clear all the confusion. You'll be able to understand so many things that have puzzled analysts, that have unfolded in recent days and weeks. Okay, we'll come back to that. But something went wrong in this very well laid chini ya maji political plans, yeah, and scheming. And before I tell you what it is, let me just ask you a quick question. Is former President Uhuru Kenyatta still very close to Raila Odinga? The answer to that question is no. And it is very easy to figure out. We used to hear of constant regular meetings between the two in Dubai, I don't know where else, in Karen, etc., etc. Do you hear that anymore? That ended. Anyway, what went wrong, to summarize it, was the mountain. It appears that for the first time, Uhuru and Raila had a major falling out, a major difference in opinion. So major, so major, that Uhuru Kenyatta's team started handling Rigathi Gachagua. I can hear you asking me, evidence, Chris? I'll give you. You remember that time when we were told that Pauline Njoroge was doing something for the Gachagua camp? Everybody knows blogger Pauline Njoroge. Who is Pauline Njoroge? She's a very close associate of President Uhuru Kenyatta. And Kenyans at the time, not understanding, were disgusted. They were saying, how can Pauline Njoroge be bought by the Gachagua camp? Indeed, at one point, it was widely discussed on social media that Pauline Njoroge was now in charge of Rigathi Gachagua's communication team. I'm sure most of us remember that. And then also Rigathi Gachagua himself, the deputy president, made a major about turn. He apologized to President Uhuru Kenyatta, former President Uhuru Kenyatta, and his family. We all remember that. But what you didn't know, and will know today, is that by the time Gachagua was apologizing, a deal was already in place. You know, former President Uhuru Kenyatta has the smartest handlers in the entire region, maybe on the entire continent, Those guys are smart. And for a while we were fooled, we were told that Uhuru Kenyatta's team had given Rigathi Gachagua the cold shoulder. They were not interested in his apology, etc., etc. Well, a few days ago, that changed. Because we saw an official communique from Uhuru Kenyatta's team pledging their full support for Deputy President Rigathi Gachagua in this trying time where he's being impeached. I'm sure many of us saw that. In fact, it was the biggest political news in a long time. But many of us missed it. In all this confusion, so many things happening politically, many of us missed it, including yours truly. But that was very, very big news. Oh, very colossal news. Okay? And so, to be clear, the new political landscape has Ruto and Raila on one corner, and on the other corner, Uhuru and Gachagua. I will leave you to chew on that for a while, because a lot of this information needs to sink in. It is very explosive, my friends. But it very neatly explains very many puzzling things that have been happening in our politics. Incidentally, just this morning, after President Ruto cancelled his scheduled attendance to a function in the Mount Kenya region, hours later, Rigathi Gachagua, the deputy president, confirmed attendance. And indeed he has shown up. The function is ongoing as I record this. That is very telling. Mount Kenya kumedhoka for Ruto and his presidency. That should be clear. Now on to the promises that Raila was given. And I'm going to be quick and I'll not elaborate. Yeah, and you'll understand why. Raila and ODM were promised the presidency before 2027. And that is why there is such a mad rush to impeach Gachagua as soon as possible. And now you'll understand why Raila henchmen was so aggressive in Parliament during the debate before the impeachment vote against Gachagua. Even people you trust so much, like Otiende Amolo, like Junet Mohammed, they were talking what we could not believe. Now you understand that. Because as long as Gachagua remains deputy president, it will frustrate that promise. I cannot say much, but I'm sure you understand. But to get full details, you can take in my very latest special report. You can see all the details, payment details and all, in front of your screens right now. And pop, you'll not only have this report with all those things I cannot say here, but you'll also have all my other previous highly sensitive special reports, including the one on General Gola and what really happened, and tons of other information that will shock you to your bones. For only Kenya shillings 19.99, Kenya shillings 1,999, you can have all this pop in your inbox within minutes. Please rush, because this offer is very quickly coming to an end. O Ancient of Days, remember mercy for your beloved nation called Kenya. Until next time, this is Chris Kumekucha.